Now call to order the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting for this Wednesday, September 24th. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Did she run against no girls? Mom.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
I wanted to say,
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Cox Entwy. Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Devoti. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. With that, we will move to item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes of Thursday, August 4th.
So moved.
It's moved by the Alderwoman.
Second.
and this project is an opportunity to finally bring.
I just could not believe this is the project I did.
Alderwoman, can you mute your camera there?
Investment and regardless.
So that's a motion by the Alderwoman from the first, seconded by the 10th to approve the minutes. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Cox Entwy.
Aye.
Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderman Devoti. We have 5 aye votes.
With that, the minutes are approved. We will move into item number 4, board bills for review. We have 2 board bills today. They're both having to do with speed humps. They should go relatively quickly, and then we'll have a presentation by Griffin Lovato, and we're looking forward to that. But first, let's go ahead and call up Alderman Aldridge. You are recognized on board bill number 70.
Good afternoon, Public Infrastructure or the Pew Committee. Today I present to you Board Bill 70, which is a speed hump bill, and I actually have an amendment to Board Bill 70. I would ask for the amendment to be adopted.
I move to adopt amendment number 1 to board bill number 70. Second. Previous roll.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from the first, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 8th, and a call for previous roll. Hearing no objection, you are recognized on amendment number 1.
Thank you, Chairman Browning. Amendment number 1 is just adding some more additional speed humps that we had left out in the Hyde Park area. All these ones that are on the list are very close to each other, right there on Blair. There's a lot of speeding that happens between Blair and Angel Rock going all the way up to Salisbury. And just last week or the week before that, we had a few accidents at the one near Branch. It's kind of a weird triangle where there's a stop sign at Branch and Blair, but not necessarily in other areas. So just trying to use the speed humps to slow people down before another accident hopefully does not happen. And with that, I will open up for any questions on Board Bill 70 as amended.
With that, we'll go through the committee and see if anyone has any questions. We'll start in order of seniority. Alderwoman Boyd.
No question.
Okay. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
No question.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi.
No questions.
Alderman Devoti.
No questions.
I don't have any questions either. I appreciate you looking out for your residents' safety with that the amendment. So I'll accept you to begin your close.
Yep, I will move for favorable consideration of Board Bill 70 as amended.
Thank you. I move that we approve board bill 70 as amended with the due pass recommendation.
Harrison School District Mayor.
70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70. 70.
Thank you, Chair Browning and members of the committee. Board Bill 61 is a speed hump bill, just one on one block this time. It was one of the few petitions that were returned over the summer months, and to keep it moving before. On maternity leave, I didn't want it to be sitting and waiting for more blocks to be added. They did have the vast majority of people on that block sign 20 of 21 occupied properties on that block, so it's overwhelmingly popular. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go through committee. Alderwoman Boyd,
No questions.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Schweitzer probably doesn't have any questions about her own bill. Alderman Devotie,
No questions.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi.
No questions.
I also don't have any questions. Appreciate you keeping this moving, Alderwoman. Are recognized to close.
Thank you so much. I ask for your due pass recommendation for Board Bill 61.
We'll entertain a due pass recommendation for Board Bill 61.
I move that we pass Board Bill 61 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th. Do I hear a call for previous roll? Hearing no objection. Congratulations, Alderwoman.
Thank you.
And with that, Board Bill 61 is passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation. And we will move on to the next item. We have no more board bills for review. We also don't have any resolutions for review, so we'll dispose of item number 5. Move to item number 6, committee discussions. Today we have a special treat. We have a presentation by Griffin Lovato. But before we get going on that, I'd like to introduce Charles Bryson. He is for TrailNet, and he is going to introduce our speakers for today. Mr. Bryson, you are recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee. It's always great to be before you. Again, as the chairman said, my name is Charles Bryson. I'm Policy Catalyst with TrailNet, and that's the regional nonprofit dedicated to safe streets and sidewalks for all users. Today, we are excited for you to hear from Doris Scott, who's the Academic Director of Data Studies at Washington University, and Griffin Lovato, a grad student who used state and local crash data to craft a study on pedestrian safety at bi-state and Metrolink stops throughout the city. TrailNet has enjoyed a multi-year partnership with the GIS class, helping us and them define deep further into our crash report while giving students a valuable real-world experience. I want to thank this body for hearing this report, which was not designed to, nor should, Griffin Lovato have solutions for these issues. His role was to identify the locations for further study, and hopefully collaboratively by the city and by state. After Griffin's presentations, Professor Doris Scott and I will be here to answer any questions you may have. And with that, I will introduce to the body Professor Doris Scott.
Hello, Chairman and committee members. My name is Doris Scott, and I am the Academic Director of Data Studies at WashU Continuing and Professional Studies, known as CAPS. We have a GIS, so Geographic Information Systems, certificate program, and this project that Griffin did was part of a capstone, which was designed for students to get real-world experience with a nonprofit organization or any other organization of their choice. Griffin chose to work with TrailNet because he first started to work with TrailNet in a class that I taught called Digital Cartography that focuses on map design, effective maps for example, this situation. So I am going to pass it on to Griffin to present his final project.
Thank you. And Mr. Lovato, we're pleased to have you here. Before we get started here, I'll just mention that you had reached out to this committee as well as the Transportation and Commerce Committee, which typically oversees activities by state development and oversees the Metrolink and MetroBus. We are holding this presentation in this committee, although we do share some committee members, including Ms. Cox-Antwi, as well as Alderwoman Schweitzer, who sit on that Transportation and Commerce Committee. So you do have a dual audience here today, and we are excited that you'd like to come and talk to us about these safety concerns that affect our residents in our city. So with that, please take it away.
Thank you, Alderman Browning, for the introduction. Hello, Chairman Browning and members of the committee. I am Griffin Lovato. I am currently a student pursuing a master's in statistics at Washington University in St. Louis, but I am a previous graduate of the CAPS GIS certificate, graduating in this summer. This project was undertaken as part of the GIS clinic, essentially the capstone experience.
Excuse me, could you speak into the mic, please?
My apologies. To my face? There we go. Yes. So I completed this project as part of a semester-long final capstone project to complete the clinic. And with this all being said, let's get into next slide, please.
Sometimes it takes a bit to catch up.
Gotcha. All right, so going into this product, I began with 3 primary goals of what I wanted to learn with using state-provided and City of St. Louis provided and St. Louis County provided information. This revolved around my first goal, which is revolved around showing geographic insights around which Metrolink and Metrobus stops are potentially dangerous to get to for those who are using them, specifically pedestrians and cyclists, with the presumption that people are not driving to stations. This is of course not entirely true. There are Metrolink stations with parking stops, but for the meantime, I am focusing on pedestrian and cyclist accidents in the proximity to stations. The second is to show geographic insights about which wards and municipalities these stations or stops are in that are disproportionately more dangerous for pedestrian and cyclist access. And then finally, I wanted to indicate the specific details of accidents, such as the year and light condition, to hopefully inform recommendations made by others in future. Next slide, please. So this is just an introductory slide of the St. Louis Public Transportation Network, featuring Metrolink stations and Metrobus stops. All known. This is for future reference in later slides. So generally, trends consider Metrolink stations clustered around downtown, as well as the Metrobus stops, are generally more prevalent in St. Louis City than the South. Also important to note in this slide is important symbology that will be retained for the rest of this presentation. Every square is a St. Louis public transit node. Smaller ones are Metrobus stops, and larger ones are Metrolink stations, just to avoid confusion later in the presentation. This next slide is also an introductory slide revolving around population density based on ward and or municipality. Also for reference in future slides. Generally, we can see trends such as Central South St. Louis City had the highest population density in the area, as well as the city of Clayton. One final introductory slide before we get into the bulk of the analysis. This is the accident dense population. Essentially, this is based on the actual population within each ward and municipality. So, for example, guests or commuters arriving into the city may contribute to the accidents per density population, even though the actual numbered people living there is solely based on people with residences there, not necessarily commuting there, working there every day. Generally, St. Louis City is generally higher than St. Louis County, likely for this commuter reason. And again, this is only pedestrian and cyclist involved accidents. Let's start with our accident analysis. So, the map to the right is every single pedestrian and cyclist accident mapped onto in the city and county. This solely uses between the years in 2018 and 2019, specifically from November 1st, 2018 to November 1st, 2019, as well as November 1st, 2023 to November 1st, 2024. These dates were chosen for a previous project to indicate potential trends into where these accidents are happening between the years to show the effects of like, hey, where improvements happening. And it still provides useful contrast for this project. For symbology's reference, every circle here is a accident from 2018 to 2019, and every accident that is a triangle is from 2023 to 2024. I used kernel density analysis. That is indicated in the left map. Generally, what that works is that more purple regions have a higher average like accident density per square mile. This is very useful when applied to the when applying this kernel density analysis to see how it interacts with the public transit nodes, as will be done later in this presentation. Some notes on light condition and a final explanation of some of the remaining symbology, namely accidents being colored yellow, orange, or red, or how I refer to them, daylight, dark lit, or dark unlit accidents. So the data recorded by the Missouri State Highway Patrol's officer from the STARS database, this is where all of the accident data I recorded comes from. They have a very useful column called light condition. In this case, a daylight refers to examples such as the top left picture here, accidents that occur on roads with adequate natural lighting, broad daylight. Dark lit accidents refer to accidents that occur on roads without adequate natural lighting, such as during nighttime and or inclement weather, such as, say, stormy night like we had last night, but with adequate artificial lighting from street lamps, like the middle example here. Finally, dark unlit refers to accidents that occurred on roads without adequate natural or artificial lighting, likely due to non-functioning or just completely accident street lamps. The example here would be a dark unlit example. This is taken during a blackout. So, concentration based on the year. Let's move on to some of the key insights between, hey, where pedestrian 1819 to 23 to 24. So, zooming in on 2018 and 2019, this first area has a lot higher accident density in downtown area. Pictured here is Olive Street and Tucker Boulevard, 415, St. Louis City. And I include pictures to kind of get an example of what is happening on the ground in these areas of high accident density. In 2023 to 2024, the accident density mostly spreads outward, but still quite a bit in the city, especially along Chippewa Street and Grand Boulevard, as well as a lot in Central West End, especially along Kings Highway Boulevard. And then here is a map broken down, where instead not broken down by year, but instead by light condition. Moving from left to right, we have daylight pedestrian cyclist accidents, dark lit, and then dark unlit. we will move on to where those accidents are happening in concentration in future slides. Now we have the hazard per stop slide. So this is generated if we focus on the left map here. So the kernel density overlay, purple, this is created from the actual accidents. What I'm doing now is that I'm applying this to the squares, the nodes, the public transit node, metro stops, bus stops. Metro stops are large, bus stops are small. And giving them an effective hazard rating, essentially indicating like, okay, what is the average accident density per square mile at this stop? So looking at the right picture, this map indicates the results of that. Accident density per square mile of specifically pedestrian and cyclist accidents. This is all independent. This is 18, 19, 23, 24, regardless of light condition. We will do the breakdown later on. As you can see, there is a higher concentration specifically in St. Louis City relative to St. Louis County, given all the red there. The specific insights can be gained by breaking it down by a light condition. It's going from top left, then top right, bottom left, bottom right. We have daylight, dark lit, dark unlit, and then dark unlit only, slightly readjusted. Dark unlit accidents are relatively uncommon, especially compared to dark lit and especially daylight accidents. However, they are no less significant in their effect. We can see from some key insights, I go down on to next slides, dark lit stops are heavily concentrated within the city. About the above picture, this is downtown, all of an eighth. Dark lit hazard nodes generally high around downtown, as well as the Kings Highway, Central West End General Complex, where all the hospitals are. This below picture is also a site of concentration of dark lit, dangerous, potentially high hazard rating stops. This is Gravois and Grand in Ward 7. And the dark lit hazard per node is generally consistently high for bus stops along Gravois. There are also notable insights to be gained from looking at where the dark unlit stops have the highest general hazard rating. This above picture is taken in Ward 14. We have St. Louis Avenue, North Florissant Avenue, seen in that purple picture there. That's from Google Street View. This very large. In St. Louis City, dark and lit hazard is generally outside the main downtown area, but especially high along Chippewa Street, Florissant, and at Jameson and Lansdowne Avenue, kind of to the south, west. The below picture also indicates some danger inside St. Louis County in regards to dark unlit incidents. This picture is of looking down Chambers Road and Green Valley Drive in an unincorporated area in St. Louis County. Generally, the hazard is high for bus stops, for dark unlit accidents, bus stops in North St. Louis County in Delwood, Ferguson, as well as Jennings, Country Club Hills, and generally unincorporated areas as a whole. In the south, hazard is generally high south in Kirkwood, some of the hills, and more unincorporated areas in the south. We can find some more interesting insights by averaging the average bus stop or hazard rating or Metrolink stop hazard rating by which ward or municipality they are located in. Metro stops, their average hazard rating is indicated on the left, and for Metrolink stations, note that far fewer wards and municipalities have a Metrolink station, is visible on the right, mostly isolated, relatively. St. Louis City has generally higher hazard rating per stop and when averaging by ward or municipality than the county. Breaking this down for the Metrobus system, this is breaking it down by light condition once again. We can see daylight on the top left, mostly in the city. When looking at dark lit accidents, this is even more concentrated in the city, specifically kind of like the center south down there. And when looking at dark unlit accidents, the first map, the dark left, this is unadjusted. Unadjusted since, again, dark lit accidents are generally less common. When we adjust the accidents to actually see some contrast here, we can see the same trends kind of observed around like the Delwood, North St. Louis boundary with North St. Louis County. There is a concentration of high hazard bus stops related to some of those bus stops. Okay. Finally, some more notable insights regarding dark unlit accidents within the city. Ward 3. This picture in blue. This is looking actually at a bus stop next to construction. This is at Merrimack and South Broadway. Ward 3 generally appears higher than other wards in regards to hazard level of metro stops and dark and lit conditions. It stands out in the city. The below example is in Delwood Municipality, out in the county. This is looking again down Chambers Road and West Florissant Avenue. It's high in the same areas mentioned before, with Delwood, Ferguson, Jennings, Country Club Hills, and unincorporated areas. Finally, this map is broken down not by ward and municipality, but by census tract. This is taking advantage of some important data gained at the census level, specifically the proportion of workers living in that tract who use public transit to commute to work. An important notion to judge, like, hey, what approximate hazard does this pose to just like the overall economy and workers trying to get to their jobs. So this map has bivariate symbology, a little bit of an explanation of that. Generally, the more orange tract, as can be seen mostly in the city and kind of like the central south area, the greater the hazard around Metrobus stops is within that tract specifically. The more blue the tract, the greater proportion of workers who live in that tract use public transit to commute to work. Black tracts are great in both, or just generally dark colored are great in both portion of workers and hazard. White tracts are low in both low in their hazard and proportion of workers using public transit. Some notable insights from this map. We have the only black tract indicating like high rates of both in Ward 11. This picture in that tract looks along Natural Bridge Avenue and Prairie Avenue, and is the only tract with high public transit use rate and high Metrobus stop hazard level, mostly in Ward 11. North St. Louis City generally has high public transit use rate throughout, at least proportional to the rest of all the tracts in St. Louis City and St. Louis County. The below example looks at Grand Boulevard and Winnebago Street, Ward 6. There's a particularly high hazard level down here, as well as a moderate public transit use rate at the Ward 3, 6, 7 intersection, especially along Grand. I believe Gravois, which you mentioned earlier, is also a problem street in this area. South Maplewood faces a similar problem out in the county of having that high hazard level and moderate public use transit rate. So, some results of the discussion. Generally, some takeaways that I learned from this is that, although not included from this, the Metrolink system is generally not affected by lack of lighting. There were no accidents in dark, unlit conditions in proximity to the Metrolink system. Most accidents in proximity to the Metrolink system were either in broad daylight or dark but lit by artificial means. Generally, Metrobus is far more affected by dark, unlit crashes, especially in North St. Louis City and North St. Louis County. North St. Louis City has North St. Louis City has that combination of high public transit use rate and accident-affected Metrobus stops. finally onto some data sources just to verify where I got all this from. This uses a variety of publicly available data, including the Census Bureau regarding the census tract data, as well as the location of, say, just streets. Some specific things to St. Louis included like wards and municipal boundaries from stlouismo.gov, as well as the main way that I actually found out where the actual accidents are occurring. That is all from the state of Missouri STARS reporting, and is also one reason why I haven't expanded this fully by state like into Illinois. In Illinois, different state, different reporting system in the future. Maybe looking at that. Here are my citations. Thank you to the committee for listening, and I now stand ready for questions.
Thank you so much. This was really interesting to see. And I think that when we are looking at our streets, there's been data that has come out from TrailNet's crash reports that has pointed to bus stops being somewhere where crashes occur more often, likely due to the presence of pedestrians. So this is, I think, important data that we can look at to understand how we need to treat our public transit stops in order to keep people safe. With that, I'm going to go through the committee and see what kind of questions or comments we have, and I'll start with Alderman Boyd. I can see her, but she looks frozen. She might be frozen. We'll go to Alderwoman Clark Hubbard while Alderwoman Boyd unfreezes.
This was a really great presentation, Griffin. You did it.
With Pride Day Deal Days coming October 7th and 8th, the great tip is the deal away.
Go ahead, Alderwoman.
Griffin, you did an amazing job with this work. First of all, I'm a little biased because people know I love maps. So the visuals, I was just at the edge of my seat over here. It was interesting and not surprising, though, to see some of the correlations between the underserved neighborhoods and as they related to the stops, right, and the accidents and things that had happened at the stops. Did you go into any more detail on what the incidents were that happened around those stops, or was it just in general an accident?
No, this is based on the kernel density analysis from previous slides. That just has basically puts a blob around each accident, independent of, say, like actual like street separation to get more of a general view. If the pedestrian or cyclist accident occurred directly, the accident was directly related to a Metrobus stop, that's not captured by the STARS database, unfortunately. This is just purely proximity based by the closest intersection to the accident.
Right. Well, still very important, right? Because when we want to look at how we want to address those areas, great information to be able to look back to, data to be able to look back to. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your work on this. I hope to be able to use this and for better informed decisions down here at the board too. And please don't forget, look, I don't know what's next for you, but just seeing your effort and the work you put in this, I know it's going to be great. So don't forget about us down here, wherever the work.
Thank you, Alderwoman Hubbard.
All right, we'll try Alderwoman Boyd again. Alderwoman, are you with us?
I am, thank you. It's kind of hard when you're doing two things at once. I was at a hearing.
Well, no worries, Alderwoman. Do you have any questions for Mr. Lovato or any thoughts on his presentation?
No, thank you for the presentation. And I've just asked, are you going to send that to the committee for us to review?
Yes, I can send the physical PowerPoint presentation to the committee for review. Are you curious about the actual data?
Yes, sir. That's what I was looking at. And so that's why I was asking for it.
Yes.
But your presentation was very detailed, and I appreciate you bringing the information forward. And so I just wanted to, since I'm multitasking, I just wanted to digest it to get, more enticed to it. So if I might have a question for you later.
Gotcha. And in terms of the actual data, Alderman Bond, wait, this is sort of related to your question. The actual project file is approximately 30 or so gigabytes. I can't send that over an email, but I would be happy to have provided a hard drive or some location in the cloud to put that project.
Yes, sir. You could just get a hard drive and give it to at the Board of Alderman. They can put it in my mailbox.
Got you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Alderwoman. We'll go to Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. It's always interesting to learn more about the data around where the city has issues, especially the city, but obviously the whole system where there are accidents that occur. I want to just make sure that you've shared this information with Metro by State and of where they might have stops that need more attention.
Yes. Regarding sharing this committee, I can do that after start working on that with the hard drive plan after his presentation. But in terms of sharing this to Bi-State, I don't necessarily have a connection to Bi-State. I'm sure that Charles Bryson could answer some of those.
I'm sure
questions.
he can. He can get in touch with anybody. Yeah, I think that they would really like to see it. I would suggest, just for ease of digestion of the data, having, if you have any like a spreadsheet with the specific stop and number of accidents and the address, that would be something that I think would help with some of the planning efforts. I know, in my ward, I was looking, I always am looking at the whole system, but always gonna be looking at my ward in particular for what can be done there. But one of the streets in my ward that has just an incredible number of pedestrian and cyclist accidents and accidents in general is Gravois. So I didn't know if any specific stops along that route stood out, or if there were any, nearby, because I think we talk about doing more safety improvements along certain corridors around places where there may be more pedestrians or cyclists. And that's not just the stop necessarily, but it's also in thinking about the crosswalks that are there, or the safety buttons for pedestrians, and they can, press a button to have a light go on and things like that. So having that kind of itemized list of specific intersections or specific stops that might need more attention surrounding the stops, based on the street conditions, things like that would be really interesting. My last question is for the lighting portion of it. One of the things that we're spending a lot of time thinking about is the type of lighting that St. Louis uses. Right now it's a very bright kind of white light, like a 4,000 Kelvin light, where a lot of pedestrian spaces are recommended to be at a 2,700, 3,000 Kelvin lighting. So I wondered if there was any difference or any way of even knowing whether the accidents were occurring in more pedestrian scale lighting locations, or in the dark lit category, if they were pedestrian scale lighting, or if it was more overhead street lighting, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Good insights, Alderwoman Schweitzer. So regarding having just a spreadsheet of individual bus stops and their hazard rating, doesn't currently exist, would definitely be a great idea to hand to the committee and eventually Bi-State. Definitely possible with where the project is at now. Just simple rearrangement of some columns. So, and as regard to kind of actually diagnosing where dark lit accidents are happening, if in that pedestrian level lighting versus just like overhead lighting from like you mentioned, like just like billboards, like things not intended for pedestrians, just like big old
The
lights,
overhead.
right?
Yeah, there's this, street lighting is more for, vehicle traffic that's more helpful for them, where then the lower pedestrian scale, warmer colors tends to be better for pedestrian areas. So I didn't, because places like the Central West End have really prioritized that pedestrian scale lighting, and it's easier for pedestrians to see around them, as well as cars, I would imagine. But in many areas, there is just the, overhead Cobra type lighting. And I just was interested if there was any comparison of the type of dark lit areas. And that may be just taking it a step too far, but it just was something that I thought about while you were talking.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not covered in this project. All dark lit is considered the same dark lit by the highway patrol officer at the scene, unfortunately. But if provided a map of that pedestrian-specific lighting versus general street lighting and non-safety related lighting, like say like advertisements for buildings that just happen to light up the street, if provided a map in the future, that would be a interesting thing to
A layer
include in this
that could be
presentation.
looked at. Thank you.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. And I echo the thanks of my colleagues here. And I always hope that people who have interest in this topic and talent around this sort of work to choose to stay in St. Louis. So I'll just make that plea that you choose to build your career here. So thanks for coming here for school. Where are you from?
I'm from Reno, Nevada.
Oh, wow. Okay. Welcome. I mean, you've been here for a minute, I guess, but welcome anyway.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. Thank you for choosing our city for your education, and reach out to any of us if we can.
Thank you so much.
Alderman Devoti.
Yes, Mr. Lovato, thank you for the presentation. I found it fascinating. I've got a background as a trial lawyer, and over the years I've handled a handful of incidents involving pedestrians or bicyclists getting struck by motor vehicles. So very, very interesting. One question in follow-up. I thought I heard you say that dark lit incidents were relatively uncommon. Did I hear that correct versus lit or dark unlit incidents?
Dark unlit accidents were the ones that were the least common. Dark lit are far more common, but less so than daylight accidents.
And what do you attribute that to? I would guess daylight lit accidents, it's maybe a matter of volume, the number of folks out and about. But it surprises me that dark unlit would be the least. What is your thought?
I would say for like the 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. commute, typically within daylight hours, that's when a majority of pedestrians, especially commuters to and from work, as well as cyclists and motorists doing the same thing, which is what I would generally attribute the high daylight hours. The data from STARS does actually include the exact time the accident was recorded. So again, that could be another useful column to view in the future and have presented on a map. But in terms of the kind of rarity of dark unlit accidents, there's not that many places where that can occur, especially in the highest density areas. Those areas within the city, there's street lights and billboards and signage everywhere that do that prevalence of artificial light. It's hard to find in an area that's just completely blacked out, except during a literal blackout. That's where I had to find the example of that. For the picture of dark unlit was during a blackout. That may contribute to why it's rare.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. Did your analysis look at within an area where the crash happened and how the pedestrian came to be where they were? Meaning, did it happen in the street, off the sidewalk, in a crosswalk, that kind of thing?
All of the data regarding the actual accident, again, from that STARS database, they don't include circumstances regarding like, hey, where specifically did the accident occur? They don't include a lat long. The most locational data from that Highway Patrol STARS database is the at street and the on street. On street, what street it's on, at street, whatever the intersection to that is. So that's about as honed in as as I can possibly get using just the STARS database. So unfortunately, those circumstances regarding like nearby a crosswalk or in the bus stop itself are outside this project, unfortunately, unless provided with better data.
Fair enough. I appreciate it. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Alderman Devotie.
Alderwoman Cox-Antwi.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you again. I'll echo my colleagues. Congratulations on this amazing presentation. This information is helpful for us, not only to have good information about the number of accidents that are occurring, but also to help us think preventatively about how we can address some of these incidents. So I appreciate you being here to help us work on that together. I shared Alderman Devotie's surprise with some of the correlations that you identified. And one that stood out to me was when you said that the Metro Transit stops dark unlit circumstances were actually less prevalent than the bus transit circumstances, which is something that to the general public you might think would be the other way around. So in a similar vein, what do you think the rationale may be for that situation as why some of our transit centers may not have as many accidents in comparison to some of the bus centers?
Yes, good insight that I initially questioned when doing the analysis of like, hey, the Metrolink stop, they have basically completely zero dark unlit accidents within that general like purple blob kernel density area for along the entire network, at least on the Missouri side. What I would attribute that to is for, at least from where the red and blue lines split, I believe that's in the Forest Park stop, all the way to downtown. That corridor is very dense, very lit. There's hardly any dark unlit accidents down there because there's no possible place for them to occur. Alongside that, Metrolink stations, unlike Metro bus stops, are separated from streets. Usually by a degree of, say, they're down some stairs, they're physically on a different level, like the stop at a Delmar, which users actually had to walk down this ramp, and it's relatively far from Delmar Boulevard itself. I would probably attribute it, I may attribute it to that relative to, say, like a Metro bus stop, which from some of the pictures can be a sign on the sidewalk, and that's it. So that's what I would attribute that discrepancy to, I believe.
Okay, that's very helpful context. And I think, Alderman Browning and Alderwoman Clark would agree. We share that kind of central corridor path of the Metrolink. And I know we all get a lot of questions about that and about safety and wanting to make sure people feel more comfortable riding public transit. So thank you for breaking that down for us. I think that's really helpful. And I would echo everybody in saying, hopefully we could keep you here. My partner's family is from Reno, so I've been there quite a bit. And I'm biased in saying St. Louis is a little better. So hopefully we can keep you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Antwi.
Thank you, Mr. Lovato. I really appreciate you reaching out to this committee in the first place to offer your research and offer the presentation of it. It's important for us as legislators to be aware of the problems facing our city and see data-backed approaches to understanding those problems. Look at the maps that you presented. It is interesting. I can see Gravois stick out. I can see Wendell stick out. FYI, everyone, we're doing a traffic study on Wendell right now for that exact reason, because we know it's a very dangerous road. And so one thing we're looking at is bus stops. How do we make them safer? And looking at bus islands that are essentially, beyond the bike lane, but you step out into that island and then the bus would pick you up in lane rather than pulling over to pick you up. This is something we've seen used to great effect in other cities. My question for you is, Did you look at the type of bus stop or location of the bus stop? You mentioned like Metrolink stations are a little bit more separated from the road, but I think part of the reason we see bus stop crashes more is that they're right there in the traffic lane, and buses typically travel on high capacity roads. And so that is a higher danger to pedestrians. And then there's a higher likelihood that the pedestrians are around that area, seeing how as a transit stop. But I'm curious if you looked at the designs of each of these stations or stops in any ways and saw any trend about what might be safer for.
Gotcha. Good question, Alderman Browning. So in terms of actually discriminating between different types of bus stops, I am unconfident if that data is actually in the by-state data set that I used. Wouldn't surprise me if it was, but I did not in the context of presentation. But it is an important point. Not all bus stops are created equal. For example, right behind us, or me, the Enterprise bus stops at the Enterprise Stadium, those are huge, well-protected, generally have their whole own area to accommodate for the bulk of people leaving from games there. Those bus stops are not the same as one with, say, like a covered area and a bench, which is not the same as one that, again, literally just a sign. Definitely something worth looking at in the future, especially from that by-state data set, which had all this bus stop and Metrolink locations, as well as for Metrolink, different types of Metrolink station designs. That may be able to be done on a case-by-case basis, since, again, there's fewer Metrolink stations. There's approximately 20 on the Missouri side. Not entirely sure. But yes, could be definitely indicated on maps in the future as a potential feature.
Thank you. And I know how it is to do research sometimes, and you do have to pick a lane and kind of narrow down in that lane. And then, of course, when you present it, did you research this other thing? And it's like, no, I researched this thing. But it's highly informative what you have looked at. My colleagues asked a little bit about the lighting conditions. I'm curious, why focus on light? Is it a matter of, was your theory visibility of the pedestrian or the cyclist is the driving problem with a crash happening?
So the reason I focused on light that was actually just a product of looking through that STARS database, what was available as a potential way to, this was in the project of brainstorming phase, to look at, okay, how can I make this potential, how can I cause a more interesting insight in regards to the actual recommendation that can be. I'm not going to make a actual like safety or infrastructure recommendation. I would recommend that to Charles Bryson again. But I believe that based on the actual lighting condition, different lighting conditions would require different infrastructure changes, or at least I would presume that to be true. That's mostly why I focused on it. I found it the most interesting out of all of the STARS crash data individual features, especially for this project. Yeah, again, there are other features in that data set worth looking at, other aspects captured by highway patrol officers at the time.
Thank you. I think that's another thing that comes up with research all the time is that you work with the data you have. And so it sounds like you started from a sound place, is to say, this is the data I have. What kind of story can I tell with this data, rather than trying to find something that you couldn't find data for or that you couldn't dig into. It also really emphasizes the necessity of collecting good data. Because if, for instance, our officers, when filling out accident reports, would put more of those details, we would be able to tell more about each situation and how we can prevent it in the future. I was just sitting down with a captain this morning talking about the 3 E's of traffic safety: enforcement, education, and engineering. And without all 3 of those, we don't get traffic safety. So it's important to acknowledge how we design our bus stops and our Metrolink stops, but also what does happen near them so that we can understand what we need to do in the future. And I think if this presentation hasn't shown us the need to really look at our streets around these places where pedestrians and cyclists are present and make sure that we're protecting them, I think that we're now keenly aware of the places that we need to look, and so that served a good purpose. I just want to, again, thank you for reaching out to us and for presenting today. I know this is kind of like a second defense where you have to sit here and talk to this really imposing setup here where we're all sitting here and judging you, but we're not, though. We're actually, we're really, really happy with what you presented today, and we just really appreciate the initiative you took in looking into this.
Thank you so much for your comments, Chair Browden.
Absolutely. With that, unless anyone has any other comments, we'll go ahead and close this discussion item. Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony?
We have none.
Okay, and with that, does any member have any announcements? Seeing none, all members who are present, no need to excuse anyone. And with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Previous roll.
Moved by the Alderman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th. Call for previous roll from the Alderman from the 1st. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.